I'm Ryan Stevens.
Dr. Taylor Waters. I'm Ben Oliver.
Welcome to the Supra Human Show, yeah?
What's up, guys, and welcome to the Supra Human Show with your host, Ben Oliver, joined by Mr. Daddy, new Daddy,
New Daddy.
again
third
Daddy,
time.
for the third time, Mr. Ryan Stevens.
He 3-0.
3-0. And Dr. Taylor Waters. So, yeah, Ryan has just had his
Hat-trick, baby.
his third boy.
Yeah.
Haven't decided on a name yet. We're thinking Taylor Oliver Stevens or something.
It was always going to be a boy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But that's epic.
I can't imagine you producing a girl. It'd be strong, an absolute bull of a girl, but
Suplexing the boys.
I've seen that girl with a big deadlift on the moustache. Sarah Stevens.
Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy week for you.
Yeah. Absolutely nuts.
But that's awesome. So yeah, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So today we have a few quotes, a few commonly thrown out quotes that we would like to discuss. Not necessarily disagree or agree with, but just our views on them, because they get thrown around a lot, especially in the fitness realm or kind of lifestyle, habit building, being productive. Just like I don't want to say like motivational quotes, because some of them are just like advice, like things to do to like kind of, if you do this thing, then you will get this thing. And sometimes you just like, that makes no sense.
There's definitely a motivational element to them because it's trying to trigger change, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
You know my thoughts on like quotes. They're not like they don't work. They sound great, but
Yeah.
like there's nothing much to them. They're very much just fringe nonsense.
Yeah. Like if you need a motivational quote every morning to do the things that you said you were going to do, you're fleeting on the edge.
Yeah.
of
Like, that's not
consistency.
going to last long term.
At-
For long-term change,
At
is it?
very most, they can be a reminder to do the actual things.
Yeah.
Just like anything could. It could just say, go and do this thing. It doesn't have to be a motivational quote. It can just be like a trigger.
Yeah.
But that's what they are at most, really.
It's like the whole affirmation thing. Like I remember seeing a video with Alex, and he was talking about his morning, and then the camera guy was like, "Oh, so like, you know, you don't do your affirmations and stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do a 3-hour affirmation ritual in the morning." As I look in the mirror, and he's like, "You're the best. You're better than everyone. Like, those comments don't mean anything." and just like, you know, talking to himself in the mirror, like, just cracked me up. Because like because I know a lot of people do daily affirmations and things, and my thought has always been, if you are the thing, you don't need to tell yourself you're the thing every day. Because I think it could have a negative impact as well. If let's just say you're recovering from being an alcoholic, if you have to wake up every day and be like, I'm Ben and I'm an alcoholic, like you're reaffirming that you are that thing every single day. And it's like, at what point do you stop identifying as an alcoholic and you say, like, I've had a serious habit of drinking in the past, you know, or I've previously been an alcoholic, I'm not anymore. But it's like, when it's like I am and I always will be, I don't know if I agree with that. You could say, you know, I have the traits of a very addictive personality, and one of those things has been alcohol in the past.
Yeah.
It's acknowledging that, like, you aren't that thing. Like, you've done that thing, you have a habit of doing that thing, you may have been addicted to that thing, but to say you are that thing forever, I'm just like that. Like, at what point is the cutoff?
Yeah.
You know, you haven't drank in 10 years. Are you still an alcoholic? Like,
Yeah.
it's a tough one.
If you say, like, I am this thing, it's like, it's almost like you don't have the power to change it then, do you? Whereas if you say, I have tendencies to drink alcohol or whatever it is, you have the power to change it, don't you?
Yeah.
You know?
And again, I'm not the expert on the, you know, the 10 stages of, you know, because Alcoholics Anonymous and things, because they've done that for years, you know, and I think it has been quite successful. But the whole, like, you know, I'm Ben, I'm an alcoholic. It's like, cool, just reinforce the thing like every day.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that is the most productive.
And
I
also,
think they look at it from that's the acceptance, because once you've accepted, then you can
Yes.
change.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, you can accept it without consistently
Saying it
reinforcing it. Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
every day accept it.
yeah.
10 years
I've
later.
accepted it for 10 years.
it's
Yeah.
like, what do they say? Awareness is the first step to change.
Yeah,
It's like you make
yeah.
yourself aware of it multiple times a day, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. At that point, you kind of just gaslighting yourself. And you
Yeah.
just-
Well, if you think about it, like the action of drinking consistently made you an alcoholic. Just go and do the action of something else that you want to do. And then you've already
Yeah.
proved
It's a
to
bit
yourself.
like what you always say about like the evidence. The
Yeah.
best form of evidence is action, not words.
and patterns of
And
the
it's-
action.
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
like, well, I can show my patterns, my behavioral patterns show me what I am. That's the best evidence that
Yeah.
I've got to tell me what I am.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need to stand there in a mirror and tell myself.
Yeah.
Stand in the mirror, bollock
Yeah.
naked.
No matter how many times I tell myself I'm 6'5", yeah. I'm still not banging my head much.
Right. So what's the first quote that we have?
We got how you do one thing is how you do everything.
I would say like this is probably one of the most common ones that I hear. You know, sometimes from our clients, even sometimes from other coaches, where I think the idea is, Matthew McConaughey says it as well, where it's like, you know, whole ass everything, don't half ass everything, whole ass everything. It's like, if you're gonna do it, then do it. Like, don't decide you're gonna do it and then half ass it. Like, if you're gonna go all in. And I do agree with that. If you look at it from a effort standpoint, like how you do everything, how you do anything is how you do everything, I fundamentally disagree with that, because there are some tasks that I have to do on a daily basis which just aren't as important as other things. So like if I said how I do one thing is how I do everything, and this is, again, I could be wrong, this is just how I rationalize it in my head. If I go by that, then it means that I have put everything at the same level of priority. Therefore, I have to do absolutely every action I do with 100% effort and intensity, as I would with the really important things versus the things that aren't that important. And that may be looking at it like very trivial, but I think that the guys that say it, because we were talking about this with I know the Navy guy would say, like, you know, if the first thing you do is make your bed in the morning, and then so people are like, how you do one thing is how you do everything, going to make my bed, going to be successful, going to do all of these things, when objectively making your bed has nothing to do with your productivity that day. All it means is you made your bed.
Yeah.
Like there are like, you know, there's a lot of people that are very structured and maybe make their bed every morning and they start their day with a win, and that then puts their mindset in a place of being productive and doing all these things. But still, the action or the outcome of what they're getting is from doing the other things. You could equally not make your bed and do those other things.
Yeah.
Because I think what you were saying, Ryan, before we started recording, was people use it as a form of procrastination.
Yeah.
Where it's like, how I do one thing is how I do everything. Like I make my bed perfect. Like I clean my kitchen and it's perfect. And then I go for my walk and I make sure my heart rate is this and I put my effort in. And it's like, you're 6 hours into your day now. You haven't started work yet.
Yeah.
And so
Your bed's phenomenal. But
yeah. So like so I look at it as like, I do not put, like, how I do one thing is not how I do everything, because the way I treat like work or my training or my belongings and things might be different to, you know, how I look at the task of making my bed, or folding my clothes, or like things like that. Like everything isn't perfectly right angled, and you know, I got floor drobe. It's like everything is on the floor, but I can be really organized at work. So there's so many kind
Holes?
of like sorry, say it again. Holes, yeah. Like there's so many nuances to it. Like you crazy flexible with your training, very regimented with your work.
Yeah.
And if someone looked at your training and said, oh, well, how he does one thing is probably how he does everything, it's like, well, that's incredibly false.
Yeah.
Because it's completely varied depending on the task.
Yeah. Do you know what you said then about like some tasks are just not as important as others, right? What you often find is that you often reveals itself in a way where, you know, like people will be like, oh, I spent 3 hours making my bed and now I'm cleaning the kitchen, but you haven't started work yet. It's like, really, you're avoiding the hard work of actually doing the work by cleaning your bed, the kitchen. So it's like, really, the hardest stuff and the most important stuff you're avoiding. So like, there is a hierarchy. You were just avoiding it.
Yeah.
You know, you know what I mean?
Like you want to look at tasks as like, what gives me what is my goal? Because if your goal is to have a very pristine bed, then make it. But if your goal isn't that, then you should probably look at, well, what tasks am I doing throughout my day? Where am I putting maybe too much effort in, where sometimes good enough is good enough on those tasks? Like we talk about, where you put some things on maintenance while you try and push the area that you're trying to kind of grow, whether it's, if you've got a busy business season, then training gets put on the back burner. It goes to kind of maintenance level. Diet goes on maintenance level. Maybe you speak to your spouse and date nights cut back a little bit. But then you're in relationship season, and it's like, now we're doing trips. Business is on maintenance. And so you're not putting in the same effort.
No.
Like some is minimal effective dose to maintain, and other is maximal optimal dose to try and get it to grow.
Yeah, and also if you put in maximum effort on everything, you'd lead to burnout.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, really, if you're like putting maximum effort on making your bed and cleaning the kitchen, you're not putting max effort in where it should be. You know what I mean? So
it's sort of similar to like budget allocation, isn't it? Like in terms of effort, you it's not finite. Like you've got, well, it is finite.
It is finite,
You've got, there's only a certain amount you have to apply to a certain day, and if you're gonna waste effort on mundane tasks that don't need that effort, well, now you're stealing effort away from these areas where it does need the attention.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't approach my work like I approach my breakfast. My sort of breakfast is slung in a bowl and I just eat it. It's not. But then if I approach my work like that, I'd probably be unemployed.
Yeah.
So, or I could have this phenomenal breakfast and then no job. It's like, it doesn't hold much. It sounds cool at like, and a lot of these quotes they sound cool at like if you don't think, you just hear it, you go, oh yeah, that sounds great, but it's like it doesn't really mean anything.
I think, because I think the underlying what it's trying to convey is like a standard, where there should be a decent standard for everything, and I do agree with that, but it's also, if you were kind of going specifically and saying in work. But then even in work, you could argue how you do one thing is how you do everything. It's like, well, I have some tasks in work that aren't priority, and I have other ones which are massive priority, which are massive levers, which affect a ton of people, and I should absolutely put more effort into those things. So I don't think, I think how you carry yourself as a person, maybe, how you treat other people, and things like that. But even then, I'm not going to treat an asshole the same way that I treat a loved one. And so it doesn't mean I'm going to be an asshole, but like, I'm probably not going to prioritize them as I would with my close friends. So I think it's one of those quotes that like, it sounds good. It sounds noble. It sounds like kind of military-esque of everything is, squared off, right angled, perfect. But it's so much of a waste of time. Exactly like you said, Ryan, like the time that you're spent doing that when you're doing so much more than what is necessary to meet the outcome that you want, that you could be putting all of that effort into something that's genuinely going to make a difference. But
and what I often find is that stuff that's generally going to make a difference is like, it's really hard, and tasks they really don't want to do, so they like avoided it by doing things like making
So like, this is a really, really good example. And I think we're all guilty of this, myself included, where I have one of those days where I wake up and I'll sort my washing out, I clean the house, organize everything,
do your bed,
make the bed,
iron the creases,
make the bed, get the skidders out, and then organize my desk, kind of write down my to-do list, and it's like, oh, I've had a really productive day. And then I look at my to-do list, and it's like, you haven't done anything on your list. Like, you literally have had a very unproductive day. You've deluded yourself into thinking you're being productive by doing things, but you haven't actually done anything which is going to move the needle towards your actual goal. Whereas if I have one of those days where, say I train, I throw my food into a bowl and hit my numbers, I have a bunch of client calls, speak to coaches, do a few tasks, and then I go upstairs and I'm like, my house is a tip. But I look and I go, but I've had a really productive day. I've ticked off some big things, which
the big rocks.
And so I think it can be very, very easy to procrastinate and fool yourself into being productive and going, well, how you do one thing is how you do everything. But you haven't done the one thing that you should have spent the whole day on.
So me and Jess, my fantastic fiance, go just in case you're listening. We go back and forth on this, where like, she loves everything to be tidy in the house. She's always, I say, oh, well, I can't work. I get stressed when it's untidy around me.
Yeah.
And it's like, so then she's like, so you should tidy things. Otherwise you can't, you'll get stressed. And I'm like, well, no, I reduce my stress by doing my work.
Yeah.
Like when there's work to be done looming over my head, that's when my stress levels go up because there's stuff to do. And when I do, I could work in a trash can. Like, because I just tunnel in on the work that is really important. Like, it doesn't matter if the bed is not made.
Yeah.
That's not going to affect the work getting done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the dishwasher's still full because it doesn't affect the work that needs doing.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff can be done after, but the work needs to be done now. So let me get that done. So it's like we both have a very different outlook on it. Like, I reduce the stress of work by actually doing the work and getting it out of my head, rather than procrastinating and doing these other things. Because I'm doing the dishwasher thinking that work's still upstairs. I've still got to do it.
I have like what like that. I don't know if it is it a thing where if I get an idea in my head or a thing, I will obsess over it till it's done. And it will, like, you'd look at me and be like, he's not here right now. Like, I'm away thinking about this until it's done. And then the next thing will happen. And it's like, oh, I'm thinking about that now. And it kind of just sticks with me. The one thing that throws me off my work is noise. So it can be messy, but if it's loud and there's like random racket and stuff, like if I go and work in Starbucks, I put my noise cancelling on.
Yeah.
I can't, like, if there's like a big ruckus around me, it really annoys me. And it just, because then my attention is like diverted. Like, it could look visually terrible.
Yeah.
But if it can just be quiet, or even like it can be quiet with a little bit of my music on or something, just for me to zone out and just stare at my screen, I'm good. But I don't need a tidy desk or something. It's like, give me, put me on a train with my laptop. You know, as long as I got my headphones in. Yeah. It's like, the film, There's Something About Mary. Cameron Diaz, Ben Stiller, and she's got a young brother, Warren, with his headphones. You don't. It's like me. Yeah. Don't touch my headphones.
Stick them on.
Just neck punch. But okay, yeah. So I think overall, I probably disagree more than I agree with that. Like, I don't absolutely disagree with it, but
no, they can all be used. They can all be said within context relatively well. But again, it is a bit of nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we've got this one, which is what me and you were chatting about prior. It is what it is.
Yeah, I don't like that. Like, I think
I don't mind it. It is what it is.
Again, because I can see your argument where when things happen which are completely out of your control, it's a good way to get back to neutral when it's kind of like, well, this is the situation. Like, I'm gonna not have any kind of feeling towards it because there's nothing I can do about it. But it's when people use it when it is something within their control.
Yeah.
So, like if someone has, say, like a bad day on their diet and they go, I just got busy, it is what it is. It's like, well, no, it's not, it is what it is. It's what you made it. Like, you all of those things that led to this point was a decision. Like, it's like, if it's rained 5 days in a row, then you can say, well, it is what it is. I can wear a coat, but that's the weather. But it's when it's, so like whether I mean, we'll talk about training and nutrition because that's obviously what we focus on, but when it comes to clients that maybe they're traveling and they don't have access to certain things because they didn't prep for it or kind of think ahead, or they choose to go off their plan because they go to a baseball game at the weekend and the food there wasn't very good and they're like, is what it is, get back on Monday. And it's like, well, if you say it is what it is, you're absolving yourself of any responsibility, saying the situation was what it was and there's nothing I could have done about it, when there is everything you could have done about it. Like, that's why I'm not a fan of it. Yeah. Is absolving responsibility when you were responsible.
Large dominoes just slid down my throat. It is
what
it
is.
It is what it is. Yeah. No, I think the angle, again, you said that spot on. The angle that I come from is I've got the personality whereby I sometimes stress over things that aren't that big a deal and are definitely not in my control. So like, take like the weather, for example. Like, it's rained 3 days in a row and I'm like, oh my God. Like, and I'm not saying that I do stress over the weather. Like, I don't bother me at all. I was just taking your example, but it's like, I'll stress over something, and by going, it is what it is. It's almost like me just being like, look, you can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
Like, just get it off. Don't stop worrying about something you have no control over. So it's like, because that is always going to be what it's always going to be, and you're not going to be able to change that.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're offloading the stress from something that you have no control over, so you can focus on the things that you do have control over.
Yeah.
So that's the area that I speak about it. It's like when someone tells you, I don't know, again, just like the government thing I was saying earlier, and it's like, well, I have no control over what that's doing anymore. Like I could vote and then it didn't go my way. Okay, it is what it is. Let's focus on what I can control.
Yeah.
That's the area that I see it. But yeah, when you say there's stuff like it is what it is, like, no, that's not what it is. It could be something different.
It's what you chose.
Yeah, it's what you chose.
Yeah.
But I also think, in your situation, like what you make of it, you could have chose something different. I think in your situation, by you saying it is what it is, that is your response, so that you can be like, right, well, I'm not going to let this affect my decision. I'm still going to crack on with my work.
Yes.
And you saying it is what it is like, right, I know I can't control that, but it's not going to take me off my work that I have to do that's important.
Yeah.
They're
both tied to like choice.
Yeah.
But it should be used when you haven't got a choice over the outcome. So it is what it is, but I'm going to focus on what I can control.
Yeah.
And then but what some people do is they go, it is what it is, just as like I fucked up.
Yeah.
Look over there and just run away. And it's like, no, that's not the way it works.
I think say something is out of your control and it's having a negative impact, or you perceive it to have a negative impact. When, like, I'm not one of those people that will try and put a positive spin on everything, because there are some situations where you're like, objectively, that's shit. Like that is a really awful situation. And so my only goal in those situations are to try and get to neutral. We're not trying to like, well, what positives can we take from this? None. But how do we just stop the negative and almost just be neutral and objective about it and say, well, here is the thing that's happening. What are our options? Like, we're not saying we can turn this into a good thing, but we're going to just try and stop it in its tracks from just being a negative. And so it's quite hard for me to get really frustrated over something in general, even when it's within my control. I can kind of I can look at things quite objective and say, well, what can I do in these situations? And sometimes I might get a bit annoyed, but I tend to dwell on things that are in my control far more than things that are out. But I can almost annoy people at how unfazed I am with things, like, because I can go, is it within my control? No. Then I switch off. And other people can get really annoyed by it, like, oh, the queue is massive, or like, and it's like, no, I can do.
It's a good trait to have, but it also triggers other people
100%,
because they're like, stress with me.
Like, oh, this traffic is so bad, and it's like, well, I can't. I'm not Bruce Almighty. I can't just go. And so it's because there's almost, it's like emotionless. It's like it's almost like there's so
no
in my
emotion
head, I'm
there.
like, well, the fact is, I'm going to be in this traffic for the next 2 hours, so I'm going to start daydreaming because there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah.
And then you got people next to you going, "Rrr." And I'm just like, you chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
But it like, exactly, it triggers other people. Like, how are you not annoyed by this? And I'm like, because I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, does me being annoyed make me feel any better? No. It might make you feel better, like, to justify you being
and that's
annoyed.
why they want you to be annoyed. Because it's always nice to be in the same boat with someone.
Yeah.
One thing you said there, which is another quote that came up in my head just now, was everything happens for a reason. I hate that quote. Anything else for reason? Like, no, it doesn't. Like, some really bad things happen. Like,
And there's
a
no
guy had a
explanation.
motorbike accident and lost his legs. Like, oh, it all happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
What fucking reason was that for?
Yeah.
The current war in Gaza. It all happens for a reason. It's just like no, it doesn't. Shit things happen. Yeah. Really shit things happen, and it sucks.
And so I think sometimes people will waste so much mental energy trying to answer why, when sometimes the answer can just be because it's shit.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like one of the, like, my dad used to always say it, like, and it would always be, if we were moaning that we weren't getting to do something that we wanted to do, and we'd be like, it's not fair, and he'd go, life's unfair. But it's so true. Like, if you go in with the expectation that life is not fair, sometimes things will happen and you won't be able to rationalize or justify the fairness of it, and there's nothing you can do. But if you go in going, there will be things that will happen in your life that will seem extremely unfair, because they are, and there's nothing you'll be able to do about it other than play the cards that you've been dealt, make the best of the situation and do what you can.
Mm-hmm.
And even then something else unfair might happen. And
it can get really, really unfair time and time.
Yeah.
You see some people's position and you're thinking, like, oh, what have they done to deserve this? Like, they're having a nightmare.
Yeah.
But it's just like it, and then some people, it's the other way around. Like, they deserve absolute hell, and they don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're going to get their comeuppance. They're not. They're not. They're having a great time.
They live happily ever after.
Yeah.
And then
Jimmy Savile didn't get his comeuppance, did he? He gave us so long, and he's off.
And again, that's it. Like, it doesn't change your situation, but it's like you can always be fair to yourself. It's like, what's the best decision I can make right now?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's one thing actually that I've started to employ myself as much as I can, is like things like my car will break down and I'll get really annoyed and really pissed off. Like, why is my car broken down type thing? But it's like, hold on, were you expecting to go through your whole life without any car ever breaking down? So it's like the issue here is not the car breaking down. It's your expectation that was never going to happen to you.
Whereas if you looked at how long ago was it before your last car broke down? You're like, oh, 2 years. It's like, you're probably due a car breakdown at this point.
Some guys' cars break down every 2 weeks. And you think, but it doesn't bother him because he expects it. So it's almost like managing your expectations. And that's one thing that I've started to do. Even like I had this conversation, I think, with Jess last week, where she was like, oh, you dealt with that quite well. And I was like, yeah, like I've started just to try and be like, these things happen. Like, you're a moron if you think they're not going to happen. So
some people can't even afford a car.
Yeah.
You've got the privilege of having a car to break down.
That was the thing. Like,
I'd love a car to break down.
Like this was like a few months ago. The ignition motor on my car just stopped, and I was just about to go to the gym, and I was like, oh, I can't go anywhere, and so I got an Uber to the gym, and then got an Uber back, and then had to ring the AA recovery, and then he like gave it a whack and started up, and he goes, you need to drive it to a garage now, like, or because once you stop the engine, it ain't going again. Drove to the garage, and it was due for a service like in 2 days' time, and so I was going to take it down anyway, and they were like, yeah, it's going to be like 700 quid for a new ignition motor, and then the service on top. He's like, it's going to be a pricey one, about 1,500. And I was like, all right. And like, I was like, oh, that's a shame, but I need an ignition motor. So like that's, but I will say, and this is coming from a very, like, you know, we're very, very fortunate to be in our positions. When you have a bit of money to cover those random occurrences, your stress levels go down massively. Because I remember in the past where I've had car problems and I'm like, I have £20 in my name and I cannot fix this. And I can't even afford for the car to be towed right now. What am I doing? And that's what, like, you could be crazy stressed in those situations, and I have. So, and because even my mum will say it all the time. She's like, you like, don't work too hard. And it's like, oh, what? Like, we've got a bigger safety blanket. It's like, you know, it like when random things happen, like, and you should expect them to happen, you're like, we're good. Like, we can take care of it. And that's such a fortunate position to be in I like, and honestly, I think that's why, like, when these things happen, I kind of have a giggle to myself being like, I'm so lucky that I'm in a position that I can just get a new ignition motor. And it's like, I can sort this in 2 days, and I don't, you know, I can still eat my foods and pay my rent and all these things. And it's never like, that didn't take away from anything. It was just a slight inconvenience. And like in my head, I was like, what a luxury. I've paid some bloke to come out and like take my car down the garage. I paid another bloke to take me to the gym and then bring me back. Like, life's good. You know, and where, you know, like you said, there's other people that like, they'd give anything just to have a car. So like, but I will say, like, just having that, like, not, granted, I buy a lot of random kitchen shit, but like, not being stupid with my money and having that like safety blanket has massively reduced my stress. So even when you are in those it is what it is situations, it's like, I'm good. Like, I'll be all right.
But for some people, it's like their car breaks down. They're like, oh my God, I haven't got enough money to afford it. Why is my car broken down? Why does this happen to me? But then it's like, but you like go on, like, you eat 3 meals out every single week. You go on 4 holidays a year. You go on these weekends. So what you've done is you've spent all your money with the expectation that my car's never going to break down and I'm never going to need a bit of a buffer to get my car. So is the problem the car breaking down, or is the problem that you've blown all your money on stuff that wasn't wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
Do you get me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember who said it. I think it was Trevor, but because when I actually started, I say making money. It's not like I'm a millionaire, but like just not being in my overdraft because I was in debt for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like I would get paid every month and it wouldn't even take me out of the negative. Like it was horrible. And like we just learned to live like that for years. But then go
I
ahead.
literally saw like a quote. Some millionaire said it the other day. He said the best advantage of having money is not having to worry about money. It's just like one less stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but you don't need to be a millionaire to do that.
No,
Just
no,
don't- Stop spending all your money.
Just don't go on 3 holidays every year.
But it stuck with me for ages because I finally when I have a bit of money, I had like a couple grand. Like it wasn't like I had like fucking hundreds and hundreds, but it was the most money I'd ever had at that point. And so I was like, I said to Trevor, I was like, what should I do with my money? Should I like start investing? And he's like, if you didn't get any more money, could you live how you live now for the next 6 months? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, then that's your goal first. He's like, you should always have your safety net, like quote unquote, under your bed of like, if, shit went sideways, you could survive for 6 months exactly how you are, push into 12 months if need be, like as like your safety blanket. And I was like, oh, that's quite a good. So I've always got my safety shit hit the fan, kind of like stashed away, and then anything else on top of that is like great because then if if everything goes sideways, I'm good for 6 months to a year.
Yeah. Well, most people, what do they say? They're like one paycheck away from like being homeless or wherever. You know what I mean? So most people haven't got like savings at all. You know? So having 6 months safety net is a pretty good strategy.
But no, I like that one.
And then we have got one more. Do you want to run through the last one?
Yeah, go for the last one.
We got it's all downhill from here, but this is from the positive outlook of you start hard and then it gets easy as you go.
Yeah, I completely disagree with it because it's like the bigger the goals, the bigger the larger the amount of work required, the harder it gets. I think it's just you're always going uphill. Your legs just get stronger and it might feel like it's a bit easier. But if you look at the actual steepness of the hill, it's just getting more and more vertical. But it's like your strength is outweighing the degree that the hill is increasing by. So you're like, oh, like this is getting easier and easier. It's like lifting weights. It's like,
we'll put it into a fitness contest. That's obviously the context.
Like
generally,
like 200 pounds is always 200 pounds. Now 200 pounds is easy. It's still 200 pounds. So it's not that, it's like that 200 pounds has got lighter, like physically as I've got stronger. It's like, no, you've got stronger. So now you can lift more and that 200 pounds is easier. And I think it's the same with like fitness goals. Like once you start, it doesn't get easier to get more and more shredded. Like the work only goes up. You just get much better at handling the work, being able to deal with it in different environments and still being able to do what's required. But I think it only gets harder, which is a tough pill to swallow. Like when you're in the gym and it's like, especially when you start out and say you're doing like a Mark Ripto 5x5, like and you do 200 pounds 5 sets 5, and it's like, what do I do next week? 205 pounds for 5 sets 5. It's like, what about the week after? 210, and you're like, so I just have to try harder every week. For as long as I can. Yep.
That's how it goes.
And it's like you get to the point you almost get anxious before a session. It's like, I've got to do more than I've ever done this time. It's like, that's how you get better. But like it doesn't get easier.
No.
Like you might perceive it as more fun, and challenging, and your perspective of walking uphill changes. Like you might enjoy walking up steep hills now. But it doesn't change the fact that like it is getting harder objectively. Like
that's the thing. Like what you said, like I have to be anxious every week to try and get better. It's like, no, you just get better at dealing with that anxiety of knowing you have to try harder the next week. That's literally it. So it never gets easier. You just get better at dealing with that. Like, oh my God, I got to bench more today. It's like you just get better at dealing with that.
My training now is not easier than it was like 15 years ago. If anything, it's harder than it was 15 years ago. I'm just better at it.
You're just better at dealing with the fact that, God, you're going to be going lights out in a minute.
But the same thought process goes through like, I got this to do now. Oh, that's going to be really hard. Or, I'm getting a bit anxious before this. It's the same. That was the same as it was 10 years ago. I'm still as anxious. I still find it hard. My joints still hurt and my lungs still burn. My heart still, it's like, it's all the same.
Because you can Rai Hickey talks about this, like frustration tolerance.
Yeah.
And like the stress and frustration when people are like, oh, I just need a stress-free week and then I'll be able to do this thing, or like, when I'm not frustrated, then this thing will work. And I would always say, do you think that your stress is just going to suddenly disappear and you're never going to be stressed again? Wouldn't it be better to practice dealing with the stress and building your tolerance, like threshold for it? Like how much frustration can you tolerate before your behavior changes? How much stress can you tolerate before your behavior changes? Because your stress is only going to go up. So your goal is to get your tolerance always higher than the amount of stress that you're under. Because when it starts to go, side by side and fluctuate, that's when you have that feeling of overwhelmingness and not knowing what to do. And like you start to kind of panic. And then you go, okay, now I need to practice getting better at dealing with this stress. And so maybe it's just, rearranging expectations, things like that. Like, and it, it's no different with like coaching, for example. Now we're a team of 30 coaches. The like objective stress and stakes are much higher now because we have a much larger team than when we had 5. But our ability to deal with it is so much better than it was when we had 5 that it doesn't really feel like anything has changed. Like you're like, well, no, like sometimes it's stressful, it's okay, but like we can handle it.
Yeah.
But if you look at like, well, what's the workload you're doing now in comparison to 2.5 years ago, it's like 10 times.
Yeah.
Like and like one decision you make can impact shit 10 times more.
Yeah.
But your ability to handle those decisions and not be stressed over it or kind of handle the stress is just improved.
Yeah.
So I think like that's when people are like, oh, how do I not be stressed? It's like this wrong question. It's how do I manage with stress?
Yeah.
When you look at people like health markers and things, when they're very good, you look at it and be like, oh, like maybe they've just got a very stress-free life. And you could look objectively and be like, wow, like they work in the stock market. Like that's like one of the most stressful environments ever. But it's just their perception of it, of like, this is so much fun. Like this isn't stressful. Like that's the thing that keeps everything even
probably
keeled.
one of the most common examples we would probably get from our clients is the way they deal with hunger from the first time to maybe as we go on. 'Cause like the first
hunger tolerance.
So literally I remember the first time one of my clients go, I feel like I could eat my arm off. Like and then like now it's like, oh yeah, I'm just a bit peckish. It's like as you get the more chance you experience it, like it's like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. Like I'll be all right.
Yeah. Muscle soreness.
Yeah.
That's how I put it. It's like
first time you train, you
is-
feel like you've been hit by a bus. And then in a year's time, you can quote like get hit by 10 buses and don't feel like you've even been hit by a bus.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot more to feel like that now. Like it's adaptation over time, but the objective stress is the same. It's like you can just withstand it much more.
It's like I've seen clients say to me before as well, like with regards to training when they first started, it's like, oh, I can't move today. It's like, well, you can. You're just a bit sore. And then like a couple of weeks down the line, it's like, oh yeah, I'm just a bit sore, like hobbling around a little bit. You
forget what it's like when you first do a legit leg workout. And you're like, I can't sit on the toilet like properly, like or like
it's so painful.
Yeah, like you're walking downstairs and you're like, I feel like my legs are gonna give way. You've never experienced it before, and you're like, maybe I need to go to the doctor's. Like something's not right. I think I've pulled all my muscles. But it's like, no, that's edema and a lot of muscle breakdown. But then you get used to it, and then now when the next time you're waddling, sitting on the toilet, you're like, oh, good leg day. That's a really good sesh. But it's like you put your body through way more trauma than you did, but you can just handle it way better.
Yeah, so bad things happen when the level of stress you can't tolerate the level of stress. So from a physical standpoint, it's like, heavy squatting causes a lot of stress on your quads, on your knees, on your hips. And if you escalate that stress too fast and the body hasn't adapted, something will break. You might tear a quad tendon. You might
slip a disc,
pull a muscle. You might slip a disc.
Several discs.
So this is what I'm trying to get at. And then it's the same from a physical, from a mental stress as well. Is like, you need to progressively increase that level of stress so then you can adapt to it over time. And that's where you see, again, like I'll often speak about my old man, and I've seen him like with mad stresses on his head that I think would like crumble me. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. And I'm just like, what? I'm like, how the hell have you done that? But he's obviously had 78 years to just progressively like overload that stress. as to now these things that I would perceive as massive,
Yeah.
he perceives as small. But it's not the stressor isn't any different.
Yeah.
It's just his ability to tolerate is higher than mine.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a very, and it happens again from a physical standpoint or a mental standpoint. You just need to incrementally increase that stress over time, because if the stress, it goes up too fast, and that's where you see like someone leaves uni at like 18, 21 years old, they go straight into a world of work and they're like, oh my God, it's so overwhelming, it's so stressful. But it's because that escalation from the uni level of stress to the world of work that you've just gone into, that escalation was way too high.
Yeah.
And your ability to tolerate isn't there. So it's like the uni life didn't prepare you well for the stresses that were going to come. Where so it's like, and these are the things you got to think, okay, well, that was too stressful for me. So how can I make that more incremental so that I can adapt to it more progressively so something terrible doesn't happen?
And it's like, it's the same thing with, like, say, like John and Nineveh, you know, when in 2021, you know, we had like, you know, maybe 8 members of staff total. Now we're at like 50 something,
Mad.
55.
Mad.
A lot, like, stakes are much higher. There's a lot more families that you're taking care of.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just the employee, it's everyone else. And I look at that and I'm like, I couldn't deal with that stress.
When I think it's impressive, isn't it?
Like, you know, it's like if like, you know, marketing isn't doing what you predicted it to do or whatever, and it's like, oh, like, you know, I'm responsible for this whole machine. Yeah. And I look at that and I couldn't deal with that stress. No, but then heavy. If you think it's probably been an incremental increase over the years where, you know, you look at John and it's like, he's always in a great mood. Yeah. And it's like, life is good. Like, and it's like, God, there's so much stress, but it's like, he just handles it. Like, just like a champ.
Yeah. He's built that tolerance over time, isn't it?
Yeah. But like, for anyone to say, oh, well, you know, just once you get your company from 3 mil to 10 mil, it's all downhill from there. You know, it's just easy.
Snowballs.
It's like no, it goes vertical.
Yeah,
like you're rock climbing at that point. It's just your grip's better and your legs are stronger.
Rock climbing without an harness.
Yeah. It gets like you know, 100 mil, you're on an inverse. Like, but it's like you just got real good at climbing at that point.
Yeah.
So it's I get what people are saying, but I think it's just phrased wrong. Yeah, I think it's more like it will always be uphill. But the good news is that you can get stronger legs. Yeah, like that's it. If you choose to. Yeah.
It is what it is, eh?
It is what it is. Yeah. So in conclusion, make your bed. Yeah. And then it's all downhill from there.
And it is what it is.
And it is what it is.
Yeah. And if it does go terrible, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And everything happens for a reason.
Don't worry, it all happens for a reason. No, I like that one. But thank you as always, guys, for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify and iTunes, and we will catch you next time.
If you love this show, please like, share, and leave us a 5-star review so that we can help more people. I'm John Madsen, Superhuman CEO, reminding you to always go get what's yours.